Our next speaker, Jill Stein, was the Green Party's 2012 candidate for President of the United States and is again seeking the Green Party presidential nomination in the 2016 election. She is an organizer, physician, and environmental health activist. She has led initiatives promoting healthy communities, local green economies, and the revitalization of democracy, addressing issues such as environmental, economic, and racial justice, campaign finance reform, green jobs, and the cleanup of incinerators, coal plants, and toxic substances. She was a principal organizer for the Global Climate Convergence for People, Planet, and Peace Over Profit. Previously, she served on the Massachusetts and National Boards of Directors for Physicians for Social Responsibility, where she worked on environmental health and nuclear disarmament. Jill Stein was raised outside Chicago, Illinois. She graduated magna cum laude from Harvard College in 1973 and from Harvard Medical School in 1979. Please give her a big welcome.
Thank you, Zanny. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here today at this island of sanity among an ocean of madness. So congratulations to you for being the New Hampshire Rebellion. And I just want to affirm that the New Hampshire Rebellion is really part of the national rebellion. In fact, I think there's an international, there is a global rebellion going on right now. A rebellion on behalf of people, on behalf of the planet, on behalf of peace, and on behalf of democracy. And I don't think we get one of those without getting all of them. My background is as a medical doctor, as Annie was saying, and now I say I practice political medicine because it's the mother of all illnesses, politics, and we got to fix that one in order to fix the things that are literally killing us. And in dealing with this political madness, it does come back to money. And I want to just describe how it was that I got sort of into this mess to start with. What's a nice mother and doctor like you doing in a godforsaken place like the New Hampshire primary? And I think all of us find our way to community action in one way or another. If your eyes are open and you haven't given up, we find our way into collective struggle, and that means action. And for me, it was being a mother and a doctor and seeing these epidemics of asthma, cancer, learning disabilities, diabetes, obesity, all these things that my generation didn't grow up with. For those who, see this as like reality, it didn't used to be this way. This is a whole new bag of worms. So I went to work with communities basically to try to get at the things that were, making us sick, and discovered that the political system kept stopping us from cleaning up incinerators or from creating jobs in renewable energy and weatherization, and all these win-win solutions that were out there. Politics and this corrupt system kept getting in the way. So many of us joined together across labor and environment and women's issues and public health to get the big money out. And we actually won. We did a public referendum back in the late 1990s that succeeded wildly because the public really demands this. And by a 2-to-1 margin in Massachusetts, we got the big money out and we passed public financing. And we need to do that all over this country. But what happened after we the people passed public financing to get the big money out so we can let the people back in? We did it. And anybody know what happened next?
Legislature changed it.
Exactly. So even before we got to Citizens United, and this was like the warning sign, the legislature, this is, remember, the progressive Democratic legislature in Massachusetts, and the legislature was about 85% Democratic at that point, they repealed campaign finance reform. They repealed public funding on a voice vote behind closed doors so no one could be held accountable. And that, to me, was a big heads up. And it said not only that we the people have the numbers, we have the inspiration, we have the momentum to make big things happen, but that when we're inside of a political party that is at war with the revolution that we need, a counter-revolutionary party, it's not going to work. That we fundamentally need to build a movement which has a political voice, which from the get-go and for the long haul will continue to challenge power, because as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We need to be that demand. And as someone was saying down here, that was then followed by Citizens United, and even before Citizens United, we had, what was it called? Buckley versus Vallejo, which was sort of the beginning of the, tearing down this structure that protected our vote and protected our democracy. So you had a series of rulings that basically let money force its way in. And you may remember the quote from Chief Justice Louis Brandeis many decades ago, who said that we have a choice between vast concentrations of power or democracy. You can't have them both. And what we have are those vast concentrations of power, and we need to challenge that power and challenge that money. So that's what we're doing, and it's really critical that we do that. And let me also say from the get-go, people are told to feel that we're so small. Little old us gathered in this tent, how can we ever make a difference? Well, I just want to remind you that what's going on out there is really, it is a mockery of democracy, but it's also a charade. This is not where the American people are. Remember, according to the latest Wall Street Journal poll, Republicans are now 21% of the American public, Democrats are 29%, but 50% have divorced them both. Because we're tired of being thrown under the bus. And this is a really critical time for us to stand up. And I want to just tell one very quick story. This was in that same election where I ran for the first time and I was tricked into running for office. That's how it is that I came to be here. I got tricked. But when I got tricked into doing something I never would have dreamed of doing, they said, it was the Green Party actually, that gets the blame here, and they came to me and they said, well, why don't you just do what you're doing? Keep fighting for communities, for our health, for our kids, for shutting down the incinerators, for closing down the coal plants, for creating jobs in renewable energy. Just do what you're doing as a citizen advocate and call it a political campaign. So that makes a lot of sense. So, little did I know there was like a whole circus around that. But we came to the point of the great debates, okay? So I was running for governor against Mitt Romney in Massachusetts in 2002. And people were so infuriated by this Tweedledee Tweedledum debate, which is what's been going on for quite a while in our debates, that the crowds were huge and fighting angry, and we basically fought our way into a televised debate. Inside that debate room, which was a TV studio, it was just the candidates and a moderator, and no live audience, and I put forward the agenda that we usually talk about in the Green Party, which is cutting the military and ending these friggin' wars for oil, which are not making us more secure, they are making us less secure, creating failed states and worse terrorist threats and mass refugee migrations, for God's sake. So I made that point, and that we need to green our economy and our energy system, which yes, we do. We need health care as a human right for everyone, which saves us money, it doesn't cost us money. We need education as a human right, not only free public higher education, but it's time to cancel student debt right now. We did it for the criminal bankers whose waste, fraud, and abuse got us into this mess to start with. We should be liberating the students who are the victims of that waste, fraud, and abuse on Wall Street because they don't have jobs to pay back that outrageous predatory student debt. So we need to end the student debt, hold the bankers accountable, send them to jail. So I was basically discussing this agenda, or that's all right, little water, doesn't hurt. This was like the 2000 equivalent. So the economy hadn't crashed yet, but we were basically discussing this agenda, the need for jobs and living wage jobs and how we could do that in a green economy. So that was basically, what I said in that debate, and you can imagine it went over like a lead balloon inside that debate studio. But what happened when I walked out of the studio changed my life forever. And that's this. I was mobbed by the press who told me that I had won the debate on the instant online viewer poll. And suddenly, it's like the light went on in my mind, and I realized, oh my God, this is just a scam. The political system is just a scam. They are working overtime to persuade us who are standing up for a real agenda for people, planet, and peace over profit. We who are standing up for that, they're trying to persuade us that we are the lunatic fringe. Actually, we are the heart and the core and the morality and the real spiritual center of this country. This is what we are about. And they are quaking in their boots that we should get the word out, because they know that the moment we do, it's over for the political establishment as we know it. And, we're seeing that reflected right now in this election, where the real energy is inside of those parties. The energy is in the candidates who are really outsiders in those parties, in the Trump campaign and the Sanders campaign. And there's a lot to say about this election, but I don't want to get into that trap of discussing the horse race and how this corrupt system works. I want to talk about why we have to change this system and how we change this system. And to start with, I want to remind you that there are 43 million young people and not so young people who are locked into student debt with no way out. And here's the well-kept secret. 43 million young people who don't have any hope under the current Democratic and Republican agenda. Because even if you're talking about free public higher ed, even Bernie Sanders is holding people accountable for these predatory debts. So when people learn that there's only one campaign on the ballot that will abolish student debt, you know what? 43 million is actually enough to win a three-way race. And millennials, last time I checked, were a self-organizing demographic. They know how to do the end run around the corporate media through Facebook and social media and Twitter and all that. So I want to remind people that even though we are told we are powerless, in fact we are not. We are powerful. They want us to think we are powerless, so then we will be hopeless. But in fact, we are powerful, and from that, we have every reason to be not only hopeful, but to absolutely not take no for an answer. So let me just mention some of the things that we can do. And one is getting the word out. If you know anybody who's in debt, and there are a lot of people out there who are in debt, starting with student debt, it is the vast majority of that generation. There are many who couldn't afford to go to college as well, and they need to know that they can come back in and have a free public higher education, because it's essential for economic security. We provided high school for free throughout the last century. It's time to start providing public higher education for free, and it pays for itself. 7 to 1, we know that from the GI Bill. So this is like a no-brainer. There's no reason that we should not be providing free public higher education right now. So it's getting the word out to those demographics so that they turn out to vote. A few other things. It's time to have health care as a human right through a Medicare for all system for everyone. In addition, we are calling for an emergency economic program. They tell us we're in a recovery, but how many people feel like your family is in a recovery right now? That things are just fine? I didn't think so. I mean, maybe that's the 5%. That's the political class. They are talking to themselves when they try to tell us we're in a recovery. For most people, this is still an emergency. The jobs that have come back are low wage and part-time and temporary. Average wage for workers is now just barely above the poverty level. 40% of workers, in fact, are making less than $20,000 a year. This is staggering. African Americans, Black lives are very much on the firing line. Immigrants are, facing the potential for deportation. These are all the people that we need to be reaching out and speaking to. And this is what our Green New Deal addresses. It provides a good living wage job for everyone as a human right. Work. So this is like the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression, because we still have a Great Depression going on right now. They call it a recession, and they say it's over, but nobody believes that. So we have an economic emergency and we have a climate emergency. And the exciting thing is we can solve them both in one fell swoop. We call for a Green New Deal, creating 20 million full-time living wage jobs focused on greening our energy system, our food system, our transportation, and providing essential infrastructure, including restoring our ecosystems that make life possible. This not only revives the economy, it turns the tide on climate change, because we're saying 100% renewable energy by 2030. Okay, by 2030. We're saying this is an emergency as big as it gets. After Pearl Harbor was bombed, it was called a national emergency. Within 6 months, we had converted 25% of the economy, 25% of GDP had moved to a wartime footing in 6 months. So in 15 years, we can move to 100% clean renewable energy and actually stop the climate crisis. And the last thing about the Green New Deal is that it also makes the friggin' wars for oil obsolete. And I'll just say a few quick things about getting money out of politics, because it's easy to do. We did it in Massachusetts many years ago. We can have, and so, what I learned in our effort in Massachusetts was that we not only need to fight money in politics, we need to really fight for that political movement, for that independent political voice which is not going to be held hostage by Democratic and Republican parties, which at the end of the day are funded by predatory banks, by Wall Street, by war profiteers, and by fossil fuel giants. We need an independent political entity, and the Green Party right now is serving that function for many of the small parties, the small and independent parties around the country. We need a political movement that's not going to go away. We've seen really good campaigns inside the Democratic Party. Dennis Kucinich, Jesse Jackson, Howard Dean for that matter. What happened to Howard Dean? It was the Dean scream mounted by the DNC to bring him down. Same thing for Jesse Jackson. He was brought down by a smear campaign that made him out to be anti-Semitic because he made comments about Israel. And by the way, we need to stop supporting to the tune of $8 million a day a military that is violating human rights of the Palestinians and committing war crimes. And you need to be honest to say that. It's not only that we're funding, war criminals in Israel, we are supporting war criminals in Saudi Arabia and in Egypt. And when we look, to the crisis in the Middle East, and I don't want to stop without saying a couple words about that, the answer to ISIS is not more of what created ISIS. ISIS created the catastrophe going on in the Middle East, these wars for oil and the disaster that it created in Iraq and in Libya and so on. So more of the same is not going to help. What did we not mobilize in that war on terror? We spent $6 trillion, okay, that's $75,000 per household. We killed over 1 million people in Iraq alone. Is that winning us lots of hearts and minds overseas? I don't think so. We killed and maimed tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers. And what did we get for it? We got failed states. We have worse terrorist threats, far worse, all of them. We created ISIS, Taliban got much bigger. Al-Qaeda became a global force. And remember, this goes back to our collaboration with the Saudis, which began in Afghanistan, where we together created the international jihadi movement. I used to think this was a fringe idea until I actually started researching it and discovered, oh my God, the CIA and the Saudis actually were funding the Mujahideen and the terrorist movement back in Afghanistan, and it gave incredible scope to the Taliban, but this was the founding of Al-Qaeda as well. So this cycle of violence is only getting us into deadly trouble. The answer here is not to turn the Saudis loose, as some have said. It's not to send U.S. troops over. It's not to create an air war. It's to actually stand up. We can single-handedly create a weapons embargo on the Middle East. It's time to do that. We are providing the majority of weapons to the Middle East, and they go through the Saudis, to whom we have sold $100 billion worth of weapons over the past 10 years. So we can create a weapons embargo. We can begin to freeze the bank accounts of the Saudis and others who are actually funding terrorist groups, not only in Syria and Iraq, but all over the world, actually. We can begin to put some teeth behind this lip service that we've had for quite some time about ramping down the forces of chaos and war in the Middle East. We can single-handedly stop the flow of weapons. We can stop the flow of funding to the terrorists. We can demand that Turkey, who's a member of NATO, they need to shut down their border to the flow of reinforcements and jihadi troops over that border. So this is a problem we can solve. We can fix all of this. This starts by our standing up and standing together and refusing to be divided, refusing to be pigeonholed into marginal and trivial things that the political system is willing to give us. The political system is not willing to give us the solutions that our lives depend on. Yes, there are differences between the major political parties, but unfortunately those differences are not enough to save your job, to save your life, or to save the planet. Or our democracy. It's time for us to stand up. Remember, we have the solutions, we have the numbers, we have the vision, the power to put people, planet, and peace over profit. It's not just in our hopes, it's not just in our dreams. Right here, right now, it's in our hands. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Best of luck to you.
And I'll just say, we have a table back there. You can sign up to volunteer. You can go to jill2016.com and get involved with the campaign. Be a member of the team. We are an unstoppable force the minute we stand up together. Thank you so much.